Good morning everyone, and welcome to our information session from the Global Compact Norway on the Climate Ambition Accelerator learning program. We'll just give it 1 or 2 more minutes before we get started to let people come in. Okay, let's get started. My name's Leonie Goodwin. I'm Manager of Programs and Reporting at Global Compact Norway, and welcome to today's information session on the Climate Ambition Accelerator. We are recording this webinar, and we'll share the slide deck and the PowerPoint with you afterwards. But welcome. This is the 3rd time we'll be running the Climate Ambition Accelerator, and we have run it as a Nordic collaboration with Finland, Sweden and Denmark in previous years, and I'll say a bit more about that soon. But first, as a starting point, it's important to, just to talk about the agenda. We'll talk quickly about climate ambition at the UN Global Compact, and then I'll go on to talk about the Climate Ambition Accelerator and introduce the Nordic track, and then we'll open up for some questions. So please feel free to write any questions you have as we go in the chat, and we'll take them afterwards. Before I forget, I'd love to introduce my colleague Srijana Dungul, who is the project coordinator of Climate Ambition Accelerator with me, and Hien Nigun as well, who assists with project coordination around data and digital transformation here. So just to get started before we start, it's important to understand where we are. Maybe you've heard in some of the recent reports that have come out, the synthesis report from the IPCC, and studies just the last few days, but we're far off limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees as agreed in the Paris Agreement. We've already warmed about 1.2 degrees, and we're heading, with our current policies, we're heading towards a deadly 2.8 degrees of warming. So it's going to have catastrophic consequences in the developing world. You know, a lot of countries have committed to significant emission reductions, but nevertheless, global emissions are set to increase by almost 14% in the next decade. So to keep this, our future climate safe, emissions have to be halved this decade. And that really does require no new coal plants, no expansion in oil and gas exploration, and, unprecedented investment in renewable energy infrastructure and transformation at a scale, speed and scope that we just haven't seen before. We need to significantly increase adaptation finance to build resilience and protect communities from the impact of climate change that we're already seeing today around the world. Just to say that it's very important to understand that the whole UN system, climate change and environment, are among the top priorities of the Secretary General. And there are 3 kind of approaches. The first is to cut emissions so that we keep that 1.5 goal alive. And that means G20 countries and major emitters leading the way to cut carbon pollution and speeding up the shift from fossil fuels to renewable energies, and decarbonising highest emitting sectors. The UN is also is driving on the idea of climate justice for those on the front line of the climate crisis. We're pushing to scale up finance for climate action, to reform climate finance architecture and deliver on the $100 billion goal. And there needs to be a doubling of adaptation finance. We're very behind operationalising just transitions and implementing early warning systems for all, so that we're adapting and ready for disaster management. And lastly, we want to ensure credible climate action to reach the Paris Agreement goals, enhancing credibility and transparency and accountability of commitments that have been taken. Sorry. So the way forward, how can we get urgent action and hold climate change, deal with its impacts, and it's going to be very integral to successfully achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. And there's so much intersectionality between climate change and then other goals such as Goal 7, affordable and clean energy, or number 12, responsible consumption and production. So really, as it says, climate action is the 21st century's greatest opportunity to drive forward all the Sustainable Development Goals. And while it's challenging, it also represents a big opportunity with green investments, boosting jobs and growth, just transitions helping to eradicate poverty and inequality, and incorporating nature-based solutions to strengthen biodiversity and resilience. And there is significant progress in the business community. And the Global Compact, we're aiming to translate the Secretary-General's priorities for the business sector. And we're taking that principles-based approach, the 10 principles, and supporting our member companies to take ambitious, fast and credible corporate action. So we are actually a partner in an initiative called the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And what that does is actually takes the clearly defined paths to reduce emissions from the Paris Agreement. It takes the paths to reduce emissions and translates it into something that businesses can work with. Another thing that they do is to actually have sector-specific guidelines, so and particularly focusing on high-impact sectors. The Science-Based Targets Initiative is growing rapidly. There are now over 4,800 companies. It was started in 2015, and we're just seeing, in the last few years, we're seeing exponential growth. We also, in 2021, launched the net zero standard, and there are 1,700 net zero commitments now. And in 2021, a progress report showed that 80% of companies with approved science-based targets were in line with a 1.5-degree trajectory. So, but actually 63% of companies are intending to cut emissions at rates higher than required. Just to quickly show a very quick overview of how it works. Companies sign up to the initiative and they can set both near-term targets in the next 5 to 10 years. And they get direction on how much they need to reduce each year. They also report annually on how they're progressing. The targets are actually validated by a group within the Science-Based Targets Initiative. So that's for larger companies, they have their targets validated. So that's why this initiative has quite a high degree of credibility out there. Then companies can also set net zero targets to reach by 2050, which are kind of a North Star giving strategic direction. So essentially, science-based targets show companies how much to reduce and how quickly they need to reduce their emissions to be in line with the Paris Agreement. And what the Science-Based Targets Initiative is aiming to do is to create an ambition loop. So it's aiming to remove technical barriers and make this science more accessible for businesses so that they can implement it on the ground, but then also to create a critical mass of companies and to mainstream the adoption of science-based targets. And we're really starting to see some movement in this area, particularly, what we're seeing, regulatory expectations are really growing. Perhaps some of you are aware of the ISCUPS melding that was actually approved in February, where state-owned companies, organisations are required to set science-based targets and document that and verify that. There are also climate partnerships being formed by the Norwegian government. And at the EU level, we're seeing the integration of the requirements to be aligned with science in some of the regulation that's coming through, such as the Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, and reporting on transition plans in line with 1.5 degree in the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. So along with regulatory expectations growing, we're also seeing a big growth in the expectations of investors and financial markets, driven by awareness of the enormous financial risks of climate change. We are hearing of many that are using SBTs to science-based targets to guide investment and lending decisions. So that's for businesses on the ground. That's meaning that if they want to get finance, if they want to get investment, they are needing to show that they have some a control over their emissions, and that they're also working towards these targets. And another great thing about the Science-Based Targets Initiative is that it has a requirement on larger companies, depending on whether your emissions are more than 40%, your scope 3 emissions are more than 40% of your emissions, you are required to address and reduce, to set targets and address and reduce those. And so what we're seeing is, a kind of filtering down into the value chain of downstream and upstream emissions. And almost 96% of companies with approved science-based targets have set ambitious value chain emissions targets. So we're really starting to see a kind of a connecting of value chains through this initiative. Just a quick slide on some of the benefits that were cited by business owners. This was actually, it's about a bit of an old survey. It was 2018, but I'm sure I would be fascinated to see some more recent statistics. In first place, 79% of company executives have seen brand reputation boosted from setting science-based targets. In second place, 63% of company executives say that the SBTs are driving innovation and creativity in their organisations. And then you have things like competitive advantage, investor confidence boosted, increasing regulatory resilience, and bottom line savings. I would suggest now, 3, 4, 5 years later, that probably this figure around regulatory resilience has increased a lot, as we're starting to see those regulators moving on this more and more. So in this context, the UN Global Compact has put together a learning program called the Climate Ambition Accelerator that has really specific objectives. It runs over 6 months, or 4 months in our case, and the objective is to equip companies with the knowledge and skills to set science-based targets. We're aiming to scale up credible climate action across companies of all sizes, sectors and regions through the local networks, the Global Compact local networks, and we want to share best practice, offer opportunities for peer-to-peer learning, build capacity, and we have on-demand training and facilitated sessions. The slogan, I think, is that we like to run with is, the world is moving to net zero. Is your company ready to make the transition? A little bit more about the accelerator. It is both a global compact collaboration at the global level from our climate department, and delivered on the ground by the local networks. And as I had mentioned in the last slide, there's access to global best practice, peer-to-peer learning opportunities. We try to put companies of similar sectors or similar sizes together so that that they can learn from each other. We bring in experts. So we bring in experts from WSP, and we also have someone from the Science Based Targets Initiative come in for sessions. We have case studies. We hear from Nordic member companies who have either done the Climate Ambition Accelerator before or are working with science-based targets. And basically, some of the outcomes are that we want participants to gain a clear understanding of the science-based targets and the initiative and the net zero concept. We want them to learn and to consider in their own context how they can motivate investors, get the buy-in of their leadership, employees and shareholders to set and meet science-based targets. We want to offer opportunities to hear from peers and share insights, to take advantage of the flexible on-demand learning sessions, so you can work at your own pace, and access that industry expertise and build networks. We have a LinkedIn group after the accelerator that people can join and post questions for other participants in the Nordic region, and benefit from that local delivery combined with the global insights and best practices. So just the way it's structured is there are 3 modules. We start with the foundations, and we take a deep dive into the methodology and approach of the science-based targets. But before we do that, we actually look at greenhouse gas accounting, and we learn how to do that and how to account for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions, and talk to experts in that, and then move on to the science-based targets and consider the relevance for your organisation. In module 2, we move to the business case, and we're either talking about driving ambition around climate change internally, getting buy-in, or actually helping you operationalise. And some of our participants have questions around data management and things like that. So we're looking to sort of structure it in such a way that it gives value depending on where you are at in the journey. Implementation is the 3rd module, and we focus more then on actually reducing emissions and strategies to meet targets. So as I mentioned, the program is both local and global. You have the self-learning sessions and the on-demand modules and technical content around the greenhouse gas accounting, science-based targets, net zero. And then we have about, I think, 7 facilitated sessions where we all come together. We have experts, or we have case studies, we have technical discussions, and can go into quite a lot of detail depending on the need. And then we have peer learning opportunities in breakout sessions, and some of the facilitated sessions are just focused on peer learning. And I believe there will also be some global sessions or regional sector sessions as well. And of course, the Global Compact also attends high-level events such as COP28, and there's another the Leaders Forum in September in New York. This is just a slide showing an example of the content and resources that are available. The program is coordinated through the academy. We have an online academy, and the on-demand sessions will be delivered there, and invitations to join the facilitated sessions will also be there. So a lot of the coordination and structure for participants happens through the academy. Just, a quick overview of the Climate Ambition Accelerator so far. It ran in 21, it ran in 22. We've had about, 1,500, 1,600 companies do it around the world. Last year there were 70 countries represented, and about 100 have gone on to set science-based targets. Many use it as a kind of opportunity to learn about the initiative and to consider if they will do that, and maybe that's something they work towards a year or so after doing the program. So just to go into the Nordic track and talk a little bit more about that, this year we're proposing to run it with Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and also Iceland. We have done that in the last 2 years as well. So except without Iceland, they'll be joining us this year. We usually split the participants up into 2 levels. We find we have companies that are advanced and that have actually started on this already, but we also have companies who are just coming to this. So we split it into advanced and basic. And you'll also find there's kind of a natural splitting towards larger companies and SMEs as well, in that the Science Based Targets Initiative has different methodologies for SMEs. It's a little bit easier. You don't need to go through that external validation process. So we may also at times split into larger and smaller. Some important dates for to keep in mind: registrations close on the 5th of May. We'll be having an onboarding session with participants on the 13th of June. And that's just like a 1-hour session to introduce the program and introduce what's required, how it will look. And then we'll be running the program from late August to late November. Those session dates are still to come. In terms of participating, all companies would nominate 2 representatives. One would be the primary one and one an alternative. And only one representative is expected to join the live sessions. 2 can join if they want to. Ideally, the primary representative would be someone in the organisation who's responsible for greenhouse gas emissions accounting, management and/or reporting, or is kind of working around the climate strategy. And as I've mentioned, participants are required to complete online on-demand sessions and attend the live sessions, and certificates are provided upon completion. We estimate in terms of the time commitment, as I said, it runs over 4 months, but in that 4 months, it's around 25 to 30 hours. So that's including the facilitated sessions and the on-demand content. And so it says here there's 9 hours of self-learning on the on-demand content and 6 hours of facilitated group sessions. And then there's a sort of expectation that you'll need to do a bit of extra work, and perhaps also prepare for some Q&A sessions. In terms of eligibility, the Climate Ambition Accelerator is open for existing members of the Global Compact, or for businesses that wish to become members. So you need to make a commitment that you will become a member, and we'll set that in motion if you're not already. Ideally, there's an interest in setting ambitious climate emission reduction targets aligned with climate science. And as I mentioned on the earlier slide, you should aim to send 2 participants, but also appoint an executive level representative to follow the program and provide internal support to the participants. If things coming out of the program need to be actioned, it's great to have that internal anchor. And financial companies can join, but there is a different methodology for financial companies, so it would be good to have a discussion around the suitability of the program if you're a financial company interested in joining. In Norway, we actually charge a fee, and this is because it does cost a lot to run this program, and we are looking for funding. We're looking for ongoing funding to try and support this, to run this. But at the moment, we do need to charge a small fee. And for 2 participants, there are different fee levels there. And I also wanted to point out that you can learn a bit more about this, or if you want to let employees know about science-based targets, we actually have a science-based targets corner on our academy. And there are short courses there introducing you to the different concepts, to the net zero standard, and other concepts around this. And the Academy, the UN Global Compact Academy, is actually available for all the employees of our member companies. So if you feel like you need to share this information with someone, everyone can join. So I think that's about it now. You can learn more and register at those websites. We have a Norwegian page and also an English page at the global level. As I mentioned, I'll mention once again, the deadline for registrations is the 5th of May. And there are my contact details and Srijana's contact details at the bottom of the slide there. And now we can open up for any questions. Yeah, I see. Knut. Yeah, Knut. I think your microphone's cannot access the camera or mic. Oh. Hmm. Can you type in the chat? That's strange.
Let's see. Hi.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
now it works. So I didn't have access. First of all, thanks for great information, and I really feel like the Science-Based Targets Initiative is something we should work for. I represent Norwegian People's Aid.
Yes.
I just started working there, so I'm really new, but we want to do more on climate, and we need to start off with just finding out what our emissions are, but we also at the same time want to simultaneously work with setting some ambitious targets. So I was just wondering if, for us as an organization, humanitarian organization, if you still think a lot of what you've been talking about now kind of works for us as well.
Yeah, look, I think if you're, I mean, I think I've spoken with your colleague.
Yeah.
We are mostly for the private business sector, but we can, as you're a member organisation, we can offer you a place. I think it does sound relevant because that first module you'll be learning about greenhouse gas accounting and mapping emissions, and then just learning more about what the science-based targets is. And it is important, though, to keep in mind that I don't think you could join the Science-Based Targets Initiative as an NGO. But I think there are other possibilities. There's another network on science-based targets that could be relevant, but there's no pressure to join the Science-Based Targets Initiative, but certainly I think finding out about it, and you could use the tool to set the targets that would be in line with the Paris trajectories.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. I see Vilde is typing. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry to hear that, Vilda. We'll definitely get the recording out in an email to you. Yeah. Yeah. Were there any other questions? I can stay on the line for a few more minutes, but if there's no other questions, we'll send the PowerPoint out, and we'll send the recording out, and please don't hesitate also to get in touch, and we can talk as well. So otherwise, we give you back 15 minutes of your time, and yeah, wish you a good day if you're not staying on now. Thanks, Birgit.